Hey, this is Tony Ross for TonyTeach.com, and this is going to be a little bit of a response from our webinar we had with ToonBoom. And the webinar we did was creating a very simple cutout rig in Harmony Essentials. So we actually had a Q&A at the end, but there were a lot of questions that there just wasn't time enough to answer. So I've decided to go ahead and answer these questions. And yeah, that's what this is going to be about. So let's just get to it. So the first question, you set the drawing pivots and then the peg pivots. Why did you set the drawing pivots? What does that do? Honestly, it's mostly personal preference, and I'll explain that. If I jump over here to Harmony Essentials, I'm on my mouths layer, and this is the drawing layer. Now, the mouths themselves don't have a pivot. So what the question is talking about is I would go in, grab my rotate tool, and I'd set the pivot point here. And if I were going to go ahead and add a peg to this layer, let's add a peg. Click on that. And then, of course, the peg by default also has this dead center pivot point. And then I was just setting that. The question is, why the heck am I doing that twice? Honestly, I've only recently started using pegs. I typically just work with drawing layers, so it's out of habit. And the other part, it just kind of bothers me that if I ever click on the art layer, that the little dead center thing is sitting there. So I typically just do them. Do you have to? No. If you're using pegs, and especially if you're working, for instance, if I'm working here with the transform tool, and in my tool properties, this is in Harmony Essentials, by the way. In tool properties, if I have the peg selection mode, okay, in peg selection mode, it means that it won't let me just click on the mouth at all. Okay, so that is to answer that question. Do you actually have to set both? No. If you are going to be having more than one drawing, it's best to just go ahead and use the peg and set the rotation there. Okay? Next question. Can you please explain when and where to use the kinematic output? Yes, I can. Kinematic output. So here's the deal. Let's go down and take a look at, this is mostly set up here. All right. So I have, the torso. We've got this set up so it can move back and forth. And you know what? Let's go ahead and add in one of the arms. So I think we got the arm front, this little one here. I'm going to just nudge that to the front just so we can see what happens. So let's do Option, and I'll press my down arrow to press the arrow that makes it come toward me. Okay. Now I'm going to take the arm front, and I'm going to place this with the torso, so it'll bend along with that. Okay. Now, right now, I've just placed that along there. So let's try to do this. If I bend this now, do you see what's happening with the arm? It's doing something really crazy. I mean, the torso still looks great, but what in the world is happening with the arm? Okay. So here's the deal. What a kinematic output is it says it's kind of like a little protection between the distortion of the torso. We have a bone deformer here. And technically, we also have, I think we had this set up, there's supposed to be like bone deformers on the arm. So if we want to have the arm not be affected by the torso, but we still want it to move with it, we use a kinematic output. So I'm going to come in here, add a kinematic output. Okay. And now if I select the torso, I can bend this, and the arm looks normal now. So that is the purpose of the kinematic output. Because now the arm still has the ability to move on its own, but it's not getting distorted whenever we move the torso. Okay? That's the purpose of a kinematic output. Now, in both Harmony Essentials as well as Harmony Premium, you can actually add it from the timeline, which is just clicking down here and adding a kinematic output. But typically, if you're using Premium, most people just go ahead and add that in your node view. Essentials doesn't have node view, so you do have to do that from the timeline. Okay, can you also please say the other shortcut keys that can be used in Essentials? As you said, number 4 can be used to flip. All right, I'm going to show you this. Let's undo a couple of things here. Now, there are a lot of shortcut keys that I use, and the deal is most of them are in existence not only in Harmony Essentials, but Harmony Advanced as well as Harmony Premium. So the shortcuts I will use be like, if I come over here, I'm going to lose our head for a second. If I press, for instance, F6, that's to add a keyframe. F7 says clear that keyframe. Now, the little trick here, this is if I'm on the transform tool. If I press, let's go to 3/4 here. If I press the number 4, this is a horizontal flip, okay? If I press the number 5, it's a vertical flip. Now, that is the same in any version of Harmony, okay? Whether it's Essentials, Premium, or any of those. Other than that, I think I do little keys like, say, if you see this little tween here, this is meaning that it's setting up this automatic tween. What I will do sometimes is if I press Command L, it's turning this keyframe into a stop motion keyframe, meaning it's not going to interpolate or do any movement in between those frames, to make sure you have movement between frames. And let me see if I can do this real quick. I'm going to make a quick little layer here. I'm going to say add and close. So if I have, let's solo this. If I have a simple little, here's one shortcut key. I'm using my brush tool, and if you're using the brush, pencil, whatever, you can hold down your O key and click and drag to get a different size. All right. So we have this little circle, and I will come out here. Here's another shortcut key. F5 extends the exposure. All right. So here's the deal. If I decide I want to go ahead and tween this, let's say F6, I'll drop in a keyframe. And then we'll turn our animate on. Frame 10, we'll do F6 again for another keyframe. And if you notice there's that line there, which basically means if I move that circle, we have this tween automatically happening. So if I don't want that tween, I can simply do Command L. And it's just going to be, it just moves from one key and then snaps to the other key. If I want to have that tween, I'll simply do Command K. And what this basically is turning off your motion keyframe versus a stop motion keyframe. Motion keyframe meaning that it's going to interpolate. Stop motion means it doesn't. Okay. There are almost any of the Harmony programs. If you want to see what's happening, check out, if you go to edit, you'll see all the little shortcut keys here, like listed. And it lets you know what they are if you're on a Mac or a PC. Okay. Okay. Sometimes when I try to create drawing substitutions, Harmony won't allow me to do this. Instead, it changes each representation of the drawing, even on different keyframes. What am I doing wrong? Okay. I think what you may be doing or what you might be getting confused with is using layers versus drawings. For instance, if I decided to duplicate this layer, what you might be doing is cloning that layer. And then if you come back here to the original, layer, you'd end up seeing, you might end up seeing any changes that you've done there. So for instance, if I decide to change this bottom drawing, okay, and just add another circle there. If you look, that top drawing is, these are my little thumbnails. It's showing that I've already changed this no matter what. All right, but that is a layer. It's not a drawing. So what I want to show you instead is I'm going to do another drawing layer. Okay, well, I say add and close, and we'll solo this. So here's the deal. You need to duplicate drawings, not layers. So if I decide to, my favorite example to do this with is probably a little bit of an eyeball. So let's see if I can get that done. All right, so that's there. And I'll extend my exposure. Let's do F5. So you see this in several frames here. And this is the exact same drawing. Now, what you might be doing, let's say if you went to frame 2, you might be thinking, great, I'm in frame 2, I'm going to change this. But you're like, wait, it changes everything. What am I doing wrong? That is another thing you might be doing. Actually, that's probably more so what's happening. So this is a step you might be missing. Second frame, this is still drawing 1, okay? And the reason I know that is it actually has a little perimeter here that says 1. And even if I look at the library up here, it shows me that the drawing substitution is set to 1. So what I want to do is at frame 2, right click, go to drawings, duplicate drawings. Okay. And now this says 2. This even says 2. So just to show you what's happening, I can come in here. I'm going to put a number 2 in the middle. So if we go back to the first frame, which actually has drawing 1. Okay. That looks fine. Go here. That's drawing 2. If I want to create another one, I'll right click. And the quick key for this, by the way, is Option Shift D. That's Command Shift D on the, I think that's Option Shift D. Nope, I think they're the same on the PC. So this is the third one. So I can now select that little number 2 in the middle, get rid of it, and have a number 3. Okay? So another thing you can look at is take a look at these little vertical lines. It's telling me where there's a drawing substitution. So right down here beneath this, you don't see any extra vertical lines. But here, I can see that there are vertical lines, and it's letting me know that I have drawing substitutions. So that's how you can change things out. All right. Okay, do you also animate the background with this method that you taught us? For example, the branches of trees move by the wind. Basically, I think the question was asking, could I use drawing substitutions when I'm creating things like a background? And the answer is yes, of course, yes. You can add in deformers, any of that stuff with respect to the background. So the deal is when you're working in Harmony, you're working pretty much with vectors. So anything that I did with the character, yes, you can do that for a background. Would I want to do the entire background? No. Let's say if it was a castle or something like that, I would have different layers for anything that I wanted to move. So flags, maybe a different layer for the drawbridge, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, can I ask, why did you disable the animate tool? Okay, good question. And again, this is personal preference. Typically you'll see me working and I'll be turning on and off the animate button. From what I've understood, and I could be wrong on this, a lot of people working in the industry, if you are the people who, I've seen people who actually always keep it on. And that way, if they make any errors, they can just simply delete a keyframe. I prefer to leave mine off when I'm rigging and building out a character. So you'll constantly see me saying, okay, make sure that is off. If I'm nudging something, meaning moving things forward and backward on the z-axis, I am usually turning that off, because especially if I want it to be a permanent move. So that is why I'm doing that. But it comes down to personal preference, and I think a lot of studios, for the animators, they never turn it off. Some studios, for the people who are rigging, they never turn it on. So it just depends on what you're doing. Can you import FLA files in ToonBoom Harmony or Essentials? Okay, this is a pretty good question. And specifically what it's talking about, a Flash file, pretty much .fla, as an Adobe Flash or Adobe Animate. The deal is, if we jump over here, I can go to File, Import, and at the bottom it says SWF, or Illustrator Files to the Library. If you notice, this is grayed out. This has nothing to do with the fact that this is Essentials, but what I want to show you is, if I go to the library, let's close this up a little bit. There's this little folder here that says Harmony Essentials, and there's a lock on it. What I need to do is simply click on right click on here, and then click Right to modify. Once I do that, I can come down to File, Import, and there's SWF, or Illustrator Files. So can it import a .fla? No. However, can you export an SWF from Flash and bring it over to ToonBoom? Yes. And that's the same across the board, whether it's Essentials, Advanced, or Premium. Okay, in order for the bones to work properly, is it necessary to create the drawings in ToonBoom? I've tried importing drawings using Autodesk Sketch with poor results. Please advise. This is connected, or this is very similar to this next question. Was the character design drawn or built in ToonBoom, in the ToonBoom application, or was it imported from a different art program? Very good question. So here's the deal. The character in question, our lovely lady here, actually, we typically do work in ToonBoom. However, I think when Chris was working on this, he wasn't at, I think he wasn't on a computer that had ToonBoom at the time. So he did the initial sketches. This is actually built out in Adobe Illustrator. So this is, we brought this in from an Illustrator file, brought the vectors still over. And yeah, that's where that's from. So my suggestion would be, if you're working in a program that can export, if you want it to still be in vector format, if it can export an Illustrator file, go from there. Because again, we still have access to, matter of fact, let's see if I can find this. Like this is stuff from the original file, the original Illustrator file, and we're just connecting and putting things together. So yeah, it doesn't have to be done in ToonBoom. However, let me state this, especially if you're just starting out into working with ToonBoom, keep trying out the different drawing features just so you can get used to it, because it is pretty powerful. All right, let's bring her back up. Are any of these functions available in Harmony Premium? Okay, let me clear the air up on this. Yes, simple answer is yes. Harmony Essentials is the bottom of the line version of Harmony. There's Harmony Essentials, there's Harmony Advanced, and there's Harmony Premium. Okay. So pretty much everything I did during the webinar, yes, you can do that in Harmony Premium. Several things, however, you do them differently. For instance, some of the things you would have to use the node view to do. There are things that are in Harmony Premium that are just not in Harmony Advanced or Harmony Premium. Excuse me, Harmony Advanced or Harmony Essentials. For instance, curve deformers or envelope deformers. Harmony Premium is used for professional productions like The Simpsons, Bob's Burgers. A lot of Disney cartoons are using Harmony Premium. Harmony Essentials, on the other hand, if you're saying, hey, you know, I want to try this out, get my feet wet. A lot of hobbyists use this. And that is the difference. So a lot of things that I was showing during the webinar are, yes, you would normally do this in Harmony Premium. If you're only using Harmony Essentials, here is a workaround. Is it as good as Harmony Premium? No. And very specifically, my stance on this is not trying to compare Harmony Essentials to Harmony Premium, but more so compare Harmony Essentials to Adobe Flash or Adobe Animate. And with respect to that, I think Harmony Essentials is a much superior tool if you compare it feature to feature. Okay. Does preset animation affect the character's location on camera, or can the presets be used on other characters? By presets, I mean like when you saved out the hair flick. All right. So what they're talking about is called an action template. And let's see if I can do one of these real quick. Let's go to Essentials. I'm going to like solo out this layer here real quick. And I think I will do just a simple little animation here. Let's go F5. I'm going to extend this out. All right, so the very first frame will make something interesting. Let's say I'll put a number 1 here, the very first frame. All right, so to create a simple little action template, I'm going to get rid of these callouts here, and I'm not going to delete them, but I am going to just make this entire area, it's only going to call frame 1. Let's say at frame 20, I'll make it call frame 2. I'm just using my bracket key, by the way. And 2 frames later, I'll call frame 3 and go backwards. So the way this works, an action template, I can select, grab these frames here, and drag this to my library. I'm just going to call this numbers. And if you look, the extension says .tpl, so it stands for template. All right. So that little sequence I just made, it's there. If I press F7, nope, not F7, let's get rid of those again. So let's say if I want to bring that in, let's say this is a totally different animation I have, but I still have these drawings here. If I want to bring that in, it's turning orange here. That basically is looking at the range that we just had. And so it brings that in that way. All right. Now the question is, well, what about this drawing here? Or actually, this is the guide layer. And I think let's select here and extend this out. Let's do F5. All right. So the guide layer is these little lines. So if I drag numbers down here, yeah, it can go there. However, I know this is going to break it because there is no animation there. Let's see if I can turn it off. It's like there's a 1, then it starts adding in 2 and 3. So this is not the same drawings that's going to overwrite that, if that makes any sense. So you just kind of keep those where they need to be. in that same direction, if I drag numbers down here to this master peg, it's giving me a no, meaning there's nothing that actually fits that description there. So it won't go there at all. Okay. Okay. Hi, Tony. Just curious. I've never used Essentials or Advanced. Do either of them have the art layers like Premium does, like overlay, line, color, and underlay layers? Okay. First off, hi back to you. And secondly, no, they do not. The overlay layers, or excuse me, the different art layers, they are not in Harmony Essentials. They, again, it's more of a professional thing. You'd actually see these layers over here on the side. And anything I would actually do in Essentials would be trying to make up for that fact. I'd be hiding that fact. But yeah, there's not sub layers. Like for each drawing layer, there's not a sub layer that you have access to, not in Essentials. No. Okay. Are the rotated parts such as the head and 3/4 view drawing substitutions, or is there a way to deform the face like in Harmony Essentials or not? All right. There's a lot of really good questions here. What I want to show you, short answer is yes. The drawings that you're seeing, let's see, I'm going to turn off that little one. For instance, I'm going to expand this for a second. Let's go to the head layer, and I'll solo this. So she doesn't have a mouth or the back of her hair right here. But if you look at this layer, yes, these are drawing substitutions. That's drawing 1. Wow, I think we flipped this at one point. There's drawing 2. There's drawing 3. Okay. And so that's the way this is done. The same way the torso was done. Matter of fact, even the mouths were set up. So there's the mouth there. There's drawing 2 of the mouth, drawing 3 of the mouth. So they are just substitutions that are set up. Let's see if I can bring in the torso so you can see this more exact. Okay. So torso. Okay. All right. So yeah, they are basically drawing substitutions. All right. Which reminds me, I think I'll flip her back to the normal way. Just simply press the number 4. Okay. That was bugging me. All right. But yeah, they're just drawing substitutions. And trust me, that took me a while to get a hold of as well. But we set up those drawing substitutions, and later on, if we're going to do things like blinking, there'd be different sets along the timeline, and then we can just drag those over to our library for creating action templates. Before you start rigging, how do you import the drawing for the library to work right? Well, quite frankly, you don't have to import the drawing first. I think what we had actually done, we did bring the image in, but you can also create the image. Let's see if I wanted to grab new layer. All right, we'll solo that layer. So if I wanted to start working on, let's say, a simple little arm, okay, and we'll even call this arm. Okay, and if I add another drawing, we'll call this HAND, add and close. Bring that up there. So let's say for the hand, just make a very simple little move there. I can still come here and grab the rigging tool. We'll click at the top, click at the elbow, and click at the wrist. All right. And if I go to my transform, I got that bending, And you're like, okay, well, that's great, but where's the hand? So I can click and drag the hand under that same point. And now there's a hand along with that. Okay. So it's not about importing it so it'll work. You can actually draw the elements. You can actually import things from Illustrator or even Photoshop and like rig those. And as far as the library, saving that off, you can do that with any of those once that's set up. How did the rigging for the front pose also go to the other views? All right, let's jump over here. To answer that question, I'm going to get rid of a couple of these little layers here. And the question came up is, once we set up the bones on the very first frame, like if I set up once we set up a bone here, why did it automatically copy to the other views? Well, that is pretty much what it does. The difference is we're in Essentials here. So even the way we designed this character, we had to make sure the bones we set up we had to make sure they worked for each view. If you're working in Harmony Premium, you have the added benefit of going in and saying, yeah, this bone, the way it was set up for frame 1, probably we need to do a different one. So you are able to go up here and you can create a new deformation change. A deformation chain, so it can work better with the different pose. But the way this character was built, is very simple. So we used one bone that could actually work for each individual pose. The same thing with the arms here. This is actually the exact same arm, but we just have it positioned in different places. So if you notice the bone's not really moving, it's because it's just one drawing. The arm is one drawing. It looks like it changes mainly because the hand is changing, which is totally separate from the arm. Okay? All right, I realize the drawings are connected, joints, so there are no lines around that area. Is that those lines are hidden? Because I imagine that when those parts are rotated, it will be a break in the outer line. All right. So there are ways of hiding these, and actually, for this we have to thank our incredibly talented artist, Mr. Chris Cartledge, who did the drawings for these. If I take a look at the way the arm is set up, I'm going to zoom in here. The way this is set up, there's this dark outline here, but he left this skin color there. And if I go to the hand, okay, there's no black outline there. And because we're using the bone deformer, it covers up how things are working. For instance, if I see if I can do this, I think there's no. Let me add a peg to the hand for a second. Or let's see, actually even easier. Grab that tool. Go to my properties, turn this off. Okay, so if I select the hand real quick, because there is a bone deformer here, let me move my pivot point. All right, you can see a little bit of that break right there. But yeah, we're hiding a lot of that going on. So there are other ways of doing this. Like if we were using, I think in Essentials, if we're using something like a symbol, there's ways we would actually use a patch. But just in this mode, we just did it with drawing. So we're covering up how the hand and the arm are connected. Okay. Is there a quick key press to snap the pivot to the middle of the drawing object? Okay, not that I am aware of, not in Essentials. I'm not sure if that's actually in Harmony Premium. And quite frankly, if there's anyone that actually knows a quick shortcut for that, feel free to comment or leave a comment and let me know. All right. When you copy an animation to your library, what happens if you want to paste it, but you've modified your puppet and it doesn't have the same amount of layers, or have more bones? Does it still work? Depends. It is, I would say it's pretty temperamental when you do stuff like that. What I was showing earlier, let's see if I can do this. If I've gone in and changed out something, it's going to look for any of the numbers that it finds familiar. There are things, for instance, if I drag the numbers template down here, it's not going to let me attach that to the master at all. And all these other templates. So what it's going to be looking for is something very similar, the naming conventions or how the drawing numbers are labeled out. So I would suggest if you're going to add stuff to that, go ahead and create new templates at that point, and just kind of test it out. You can bring in your old templates. It will usually show you, not like it's going to get a pop-up window or anything, but you'll know where you'll start seeing visually where there's any mishaps, and then just go in and correct those and resave out that template. All right, and that's the last of the Q&A. Again, I hope you enjoyed the webinar, and we are going to be doing a few more little quick tutorials, maybe even a webinar or two, before we do our final release on June 1st of creating simple turnaround rigs in Harmony Essentials. So if you want to go ahead and grab that, we are having a pre-sale discount. So if you check that out, you can go ahead and sign up for that. I think we actually are giving away a bonus along with that, which is our Pepper character, showing a quick course on that, and even how to set up a walk cycle. It's not a full turnaround rig, but it is a 3/4 rig of our character, the Pepper. Anyway, this has been Tony Ross for TonyTeach.com. Make art, not excuses. So go make something. Have a good one.